Hey everyone, welcome back to BrowncoatNerd. Today we're going to take a look at the HK polymer lower I got here from Gatewood Supply. First thing I want to apologize, our neighbors are getting some roof work done, so I've been waiting all day to do this video, and the other stuff out there working, so hopefully that doesn't come across too much and it's too annoying. So, what I got here is I've been looking around for a lower for my Century Arm C93. Guess I should have pulled out what originally came on it. This is what originally came on it. It's still a polymer lower. It's kind of got finger grooves and a little bit of texturing here on the grip. The one thing I hated is just is very cheap looking. That side doesn't look too bad, but this side you can kind of see what I'm talking about. It just looks like garbage, the paint job here. And it's not really paint fill. These are raised letters. Feels like on this side it's actually pressed in, so that's why that side looks better. But yeah, so not the best paint job. Of course, it looks kind of hideous because of that. Also, this polymer is just kind of the smooth side up here. A lot of these will have a little bit of texture to them. They just look a little bit better. Obviously, you'll have different grips. And then you also kind of have three basic different kind of lowers that you can get for these. And you've got the metal one that the very first originally came out with. Then you have what's called the SEF, which is what this one is here. And then you also have the diagram or the ambi lowers, which are also polymer but a little bit different. I'll go into the differences of all three kind of polymer options you have there, but getting back to exactly what this is. These lowers can be a little bit pricey. A lot of the polymer ones I was looking at were around the $80 range, and that's just for the converted lower. Now, if you buy one of these surplus lowers brand new and you want to put it on yourself, you are going to have to do some work, because as you can see, this has a little pinhole there. Almost all semi-auto versions of these will not have that pinhole there. It's got a little shelf, which this will clip onto for the semi-auto versions. That way you can't just take the full auto trigger pack and slap it into one of these lowers, and ATF is a little picky about that stuff. So a lot of times you'll find these surplus lowers and they'll be advertised as being clipped. So what that means is it has been converted to have a little shelf in here like this that it can lock onto that semi-auto shelf, so you can put it onto your gun. You could also, of course, do that yourself if you're handy with a welder or anything like that. So I was really happy when I came across this. I got it from Gatewood Supply. They have it advertised as an HK 53/93 SUO polymer lower housing, clipped from Malaysia, rated in good condition. It is part number 2556, and it ran me $47, which is a lot cheaper than $80 if you guys are doing the math. So I was pretty happy with that. Put this over here. Now, they did say it comes from Malaysia. It's surplus from Malaysia. And I do have a video on the C93 itself, kind of going over specifically the C93 and a little bit of the history of the HK 33/93. So the C93s here, basically, a lot of sources have either said they're made using surplus Malaysian parts, which this lower is a surplus Malaysian part, or Thailand parts. Now, in my research, I think on my video I did over the history of this gun here, I think I kind of determined that they were most likely from Thailand. This is not the original handguard. The original handguard has a very unique texture on there. And I did find at least one photograph of a Thai police officer or military guy sporting a C93. And it was a good enough picture. I could clearly see that handguard had that same kind of unique bubble texture. Just real quick, is this here. It's kind of warty. Now, very good chance that the Malaysian contract HKs had the same material on them. So, what I'm getting at, there's a small chance that this lower is actually proper to the surplus parts kit that this C93 was made from. Or it's from Thailand, not Malaysia. But anyways, So I kind of thought that was interesting. Now, like I said, they advertise it as an SUO lower, but that's essentially the same as an SEF. The SEF is just basically safe, semi-auto, and full auto, but in German, whatever that translates to. No, I'm not going to try to butcher that. Mostly because I didn't write it down. I've got no problem with embarrassing myself, but I didn't write it down, so I don't have that for you. So what we get with this lower, like I said, it's advertised for the 93 or the 53. Get the other side here. These letters, looks like they were color filled. They definitely are starting to wear out. I thought about trying to touch that up. I'm just kind of concerned how easy the excess paint will be to clean up around that with it being plastic. I haven't really color filled too many plastic parts, and see these ones, they kind of have like almost a window cut out in the texture, and I could just see paint getting jammed up in the sides of that. So really would like to touch these up. Don't know if I will, because I'm just nervous I'll make it worse than what it is. But you can see that front there where the pin normally went. There is no pin there. You can see that solid block shelf that's in the way. Now sometimes you will see these lowers offered with kind of, it's basically a hacked up pin, and we'll just attach part of it there so it looks like there is a pin going through it. To me, I'm not really all that concerned with that look, you know. I mean, if this came that way, I would have been fine with it, as long as it was done properly. I've seen some where the pins are kind of like cockeyed and they actually kind of look horrible. So felt a little safer bet getting one without it, and this was only offered without it. It wasn't an option or anything, so I'm fine not having that little fake pin in there. Of course, on the original one, it was just a solid ear. And I feel like I have seen some of the metal lowers where they just cut this section clean off. So I am glad at least has the ear, even though it has an empty pin spot. I think that looks better than, you know, just that piece missing altogether. So we got a little bit of a thumb rest here. So this is not left-handed shooter friendly. Then over here we got a little nub. Now if I had any complaints about this grip, it would be that nub. I feel like if I were to take this out and just shoot this all day at the range, that I'm pretty sure I'm going to end up getting a blister in the palm of my hand from that nub. Like, I feel like it wasn't quite so defined as it is, but it isn't sticking out there. Now this grip is a very different shape compared to what came off of the C93. You can see this one here is a little bit longer and definitely thinner. This one's got a little more beef to it. Not a lot more, but it's a little bit thicker around. Kind of has some finger grooves, but it's a little bit shorter. So for me, it's no issue. I have kind of small hands. You can kind of see here how this is sticking out. The angle of the grip is a little bit different too. And then one thing I do really like about this new grip here is this section here does come up a little bit higher on the new grip. That's one thing I didn't really like about this. I feel like it's kind of pulling my middle finger down. Whereas this one, my middle finger is definitely still rubbing up against it quite a bit, but it's getting up there a lot more than what it was on this grip. So I do really like this grip quite a bit more as far as feel. Other than that, a little bit, but like I said, I feel like that'd only be an issue if I was just shooting this like all day at the range. So might not ever even become an issue for me. And out of curiosity, I did take this lower and put it on my Century Arms C308, which is a Set Me C build with surplus parts. And it was interchangeable. So I was kind of surprised that that fit on there. And I had a feeling I saw somewhere that the 93, the MP5, and the G3 lowers were all essentially interchangeable. You know, you might have to do a little bit of filing to fit it to your specific gun. But I ended up taking this back off the Century. The Safe and F are marked a little bit better on the Century. They don't look quite as bad as this. And the Century Lower is pretty much the exact same thing as this, except this is smooth. There's no finger grooves here, and there's no texture on it. To me, they both look out of place on the Set Knee C. I will eventually get a metal lower fitted to that. So I just took it back off. I just put it on there out of curiosity. So just so you guys know. So if you end up finding one of these and it's advertised for an MP5 or a G3 and you're wanting to put it on your 93, I'm pretty sure it's going to fit. You might need to do some minor filing. Now, of course, if you're wanting to get something like, historically accurate, I'm sure there's little differences on the MP5 and the G3 lowers that, that wouldn't be correct. They never had that small little detail on the 93. So there's that. But if you're just going for the looks factor, which honestly, that's kind of the main thing I was going with. Yeah, it does feel a little bit better, but I think it looks better more than it feels better. So pretty happy with this, regardless of exactly where it came from. Now, also, if you're wondering, obviously we have our Safe, U for semi-auto, and O for full auto, but of course, this does not have the full auto trigger group in it. But the nice thing is, it will, just so you guys know, we are in down here in full auto, it will fire. I cannot believe my dog didn't start barking at me. So, that's one thing I wasn't sure if once I flipped this down into the full auto, if that would just be like another safe position or not, but it's still semi-auto, which kind of makes me happy. I mean, I'd be even happier if it fired in full auto once I switched to full auto, but hey, it is what it is. So going back to the different kind of lowers you can essentially get for this, let me get my cheat sheet back up there. So you have 3 different kind of lower housings to choose from. Within those, you have 2 different trigger packs that will go to specific lowers. I'll get into that in just a second. So you got 3 different lowers, 2 different trigger packs, and 3 different safety levers. So originally these came with a metal trigger housing. Now that has the small hole safety notch for this little safety. It's got a little hole that goes through. This one goes all the way through, so you can see where it's position it is on the other side. The metal ones came with the smaller safety hole, which is the same as the SEF lowers, which is what this is. So the trigger pack between the metal lowers and your SEF lower, those are interchangeable. Now you will need to change out your safety because the safety on the metal trigger housings is a little bit longer than on the polymer ones. So, the metal one's a little bit thinner, not longer, but it's a little bit thinner. Now I think you could still get it to work, but this side right here is going to be recessed in there quite a bit. And if you're to use the polymer safety selector on the metal one, it's going to stick out quite a bit. Like I said, I'm pretty sure they still will actually function. It's just it's going to look a little goofy. And these are pretty cheap parts there. So that is something you want to keep in mind that you'll want to change over if you're switching from a metal trigger housing to the SEF, or if you're switching from the SEF to the metal trigger housing. So like I said, the second trigger housing is your SEF. Same trigger pack as the metal one, different safety lever. And most of the SEF ones are just going to have the position indicator on the other side. I do think there might be some options out there for it to be ambidextrous. And the same goes for the metal ones. Almost all of them, you're just going to have the safety on the left side with an indicator on the right. I do think there are some that you can, put on your metal one to turn it into ambidextrous. And I think there are some safety levers you can put on the SEF to make it ambidextrous as well. Now your third trigger pack option you have is what they call the diagram, or a lot of times I just see them refer to it as the ambidextrous trigger pack. Now that one, instead of having the SEF marks, was getting ready to say SUO, but that's just a specific one. So what Germany did, instead of using letters to indicate what firing position you were on, they used a little picture. So that's why it's also called the diagram lower. And basically it's got like a little white bullet shaped looking thing, I think with like an X through it. Then your next position, it'll be like a little red mark with a single bullet, and then the next one will be like a little red mark with, I think, like 3 or multiple bullets. Some of those might actually come in the S1 and 25 or 30 marked. But at least the majority of them are a diagram design. And with those, most of them will come with an ambidextrous safety lever on the other side. Once again, I think I have seen some of those where it's just an indicator, like on the metal lowers and the SEF or housings and the SEF housing, like this one here. But most of the ambidextrous or diagram ones will indeed have the ambidextrous safety lever. Now, those ones have a trigger pack that's all unique to them in their own, because the little hole that you put the safety lever through is bigger than what it is on the trigger pack for the SEF or the metal housings. I know that might have seemed confusing, but I hope you guys got the gist of what's going on there. So just when you're looking around to replace your lower on any of these HKs, that's something to keep in mind. So like if I had an SEF lower and I switched to this, you know, there's nothing I have to do at all, you know. But if you're switching from the metal to the SEF, or, you know, SEF to metal, you got the safety lever, which is pretty cheap to change out, and that's really it. But if you're wanting to go from the SEF or the metal trigger housing to a diagram trigger housing, you're going to have to spend money on a trigger pack, which is going to run quite a bit of money. And then, of course, you know, the safety lever if that trigger pack does not come with one. So just wanted to give you the quick rundown on your different options for your lowers there. Like I said, this is the HK 53/93 SUO polymer lower housing, clipped from Malaysia with a good rating on the condition. Got it from Gatewood Supply. Ran 47 bucks. I think it was like 46.95 or whatever, but $47. Part number 2556. So if you don't care specifically about having the SEF marks on here, I think that's why probably this one was like half the freaking price, is simply because it's in a different language instead of German, you know. So that's a hell of a bargain to me. Not to mention that this parts kit, you know, could have come from the same country that this lower came from. So that is a-okay with me. I also do have a video, like I said earlier, on the kind of the overall history and specifics of this being a C93. I also have a video on this ventilated handguard that I added on here. Still have not fired it with this handguard yet, so I do not know if this is actually going to help cooling or if it's just going to cook my fingers even more. Then I've got another video, I don't think I was actually made live yet or public yet, on this actual HK contract bipod. So if you're curious about that, this is a really good bipod. I do have that out there. And then, of course, I will eventually be publishing a video, already made it, on the disassembly of these HK 33/93 mags, specifically the 40 round aluminum one. I couldn't find any videos. Someone once told me you got to be careful with these because there's 2 springs inside, so it just made me intimidated. They're super easy to break down, so I went ahead and did a quick video on that because I could not find any videos on that on YouTube, so I figured I'd do that. So, got a few other videos out there on this 93 here if you're curious. But yeah, that's all the information I have on the lower. I'm very happy with it so far. I, you know, wasn't going for a big upgrade in the looks. Wanted to keep it with polymer. I think this looks perfect. And for the price, I really cannot complain. Forgot to mention, I did have to file just a little bit on the inside of these ears here on both sides. It was a little bit too tight to fit over that block. But just a few minutes with filing, and it's now a nice snug fit, but it's not too tight where I can't get it in there. So, all right, guys, that is it. That is our supposed to be a quick look at a polymer lower, but turned into 20 minutes. So, all right, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you found some useful information with it. And most importantly, stay safe and stay shiny.